In the vast expanse of the Orion Arm, humanity's first encounter with alien life didn't go quite as expected. The year was 2157, and Earth's combined fleet of just 37 ships was considered laughably small by galactic standards. Commander Sarah Chen still remembered the sneers and condescending chuckles from the Zaxxery diplomatic delegation during first contact. "You call these vessels a fleet?" The alien ambassador had gestured dismissively at the holographic display of Earth's proudest achievements in space warfare. To them, our ships must have looked like toys, simple, boxy designs lacking the sleek, organic curves of their biomechanical vessels. But what the aliens didn't understand was that these ships carried something far more dangerous than advanced weapons or sophisticated shields. They carry human ingenuity, determination, and most importantly, centuries of warfare experience that had been hardwired into our DNA. I was there on the bridge of the EDF Hyperion when the first shots were fired. Not by us, mind you. We were peaceful explorers at heart. The Zaxxery, emboldened by their technological superiority, decided that Earth's resource-rich solar system would make a fine addition to their ever-expanding empire. They thought we'd surrender at the mere sight of their massive fleet of 300 ships. "They're giving us one standard rotation to surrender unconditionally," Lieutenant David Walsh announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. We prepared for this possibility ever since we detected the first alien signals 2 years ago. Commander Chen stood from her captain's chair, her weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the tactical displays. "Send them our response. Come and take it." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the same smile I'd seen during countless training exercises when she was about to reveal an ace up her sleeve. The Zaxxery fleet approached in a standard triangle formation, their bioships pulsing with an eerie purple light. They'd positioned themselves exactly where we wanted them. Our tiny fleet, scattered across the orbit of Mars, must have looked disorganized and scared to their sensors. But that's the thing about humans. We're really good at looking weak when we want to. "All ships, execute Operation Thermopylae," Chen commanded. The crew's tension was palpable as we waited for the precise moment. The enemy fleet drew closer, their weapons charging, confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had no idea they were flying into a trap that had taken us months to prepare. Just before the Zaxxery opened fire, Chen gave the signal. Now. What happened next would be remembered for generations to come. The seemingly empty space around the alien fleet erupted with activity. Thousands of automated defense platforms, hidden in the asteroid belt, powered up simultaneously. Dormant mines, disguised as space debris, activated their targeting systems. And most importantly, the quantum entanglement disruptors, technology we'd kept secret even from our own people, began their work. The Zaxxery's sophisticated neural networks, which controlled their bioships, started to fail. Their elegant formations broke apart as ships lost communication with each other. Panic spread through their ranks as they realized that their technological superiority had suddenly become their greatest weakness. Commander Chen's voice cut through the chaos with calm authority. "All ships, battle formations. Let's show them why you should never underestimate humanity." But as we moved to engage, something unexpected happened, something that would change the course of not just this battle, but of human history itself. Through the chaos and confusion of the initial assault, our sensors detected a new signal, one that neither we nor the Zaxxery had anticipated, and what we discovered in the next few moments would prove that in space, the greatest threats don't always come from the most obvious enemies. The unknown signal pulsed through our sensor arrays with an intensity that made our most sophisticated equipment struggle. At first, we thought it was some kind of weapon, maybe a last resort defense system from the Zaxxery. But Lieutenant Walsh's face turned pale as he analyzed the readings. "Commander, this isn't Zaxxery tech. The signal pattern is completely different from anything we've encountered before." He paused, double-checking his readings, "and it's coming from behind us." The battle around us seemed to pause as both human and Zaxxery ships detected the new presence. Through the main viewport, we watched as space itself appeared to bend and twist. creating a ripple effect that reminded me of heat waves over hot pavement back on Earth. What emerged from that distortion made my breath catch in my throat. A single ship, if you could call it that, a massive construct of what looked like liquid metal, constantly shifting and flowing like quicksilver. It dwarfed our largest vessels, making even the Zaxxry flagship look like a rowboat beside an aircraft carrier. All ships, maintain defensive positions, Commander Chen ordered, her voice betraying none of the anxiety I knew she must be feeling. But do not, I repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. The strange vessel hung there in space, motionless, as if studying the scene before it. Our quantum disruptors seemed to have no effect on it, and our sensors couldn't penetrate its ever-shifting hull. The Zaxxry, their ships still struggling with our countermeasures, had regrouped into a defensive formation. "We're receiving a transmission," Walsh announced. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies, in every known language, including Earth languages we haven't even shared with the galactic community." The message was simple, yet it sent chills down my spine. "We have been watching. We have been waiting. The test begins now." Before anyone could respond, the massive ship released what looked like thousands of smaller objects, each about the size of a shuttle. They spread out across the battlefield like a swarm of metallic insects, positioning themselves between our fleet and the Zaxxry. "Sir," one of our sensor operators called out, "those smaller craft. They're generating some kind of energy field. It's affecting both our ships and the Zaxxry vessels. We're being contained." Commander Chen stood from her chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The smaller vessels had created a perfect sphere around both fleets, trapping us together like fish in a cosmic bowl. But why? The answer came from an unexpected source. The Zaxxry ambassador himself hailed us on an open channel, his typically arrogant tone replaced with something I'd never heard in an alien voice before: fear. "Humans," he said, "we know what these beings are. They are the Watchers, the ones spoken of in our oldest legends, the ones who test emerging civilizations to determine their worth." He paused, and I could hear the trembling in his voice. "And now, because of our conflict, they have come to test us both." Commander Chen's expression hardened as she processed this information. Our sensors showed the sphere of energy growing stronger, more solid. Whatever test these Watchers had planned, we were now committed to it, whether we wanted to be or not. The massive ship pulsed once more, and another message came through: "Two species, one space. Cooperation or extinction. You have one planetary rotation to prove your worth. The trial begins." And that's when our ship's systems started shutting down, one by one, leaving us floating in space with our supposed enemies, facing a challenge that would determine the fate of both our species. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the greatest victories come not from our strength, but from our ability to overcome our deepest prejudices. As our ship's systems failed one by one, panic threatened to overtake both fleets. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the Hyperion's bridge, and the usual hum of our engines fell silent. Even our life support systems were running on backup power, leaving us with less than 6 hours of breathable air. "Status report," Commander Chen demanded, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. The response wasn't encouraging. We had minimal maneuvering thrusters, basic communications, and just enough power to maintain essential life support. The Zaxxry fleet appeared to be in the same situation. Through the viewport, we could see the Watchers' smaller vessels forming intricate patterns in space, creating what looked like a massive three-dimensional maze between our positions. Their larger ship remained motionless, observing silently like some cosmic judge. "New transmission incoming," Walsh announced, his fingers dancing across his backup console. The Watcher's message appeared on our emergency screens. "The path forward requires both. Separate, you will fail. Together, you may survive." Commander Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the maze-like structure. "They're not testing our military might," she muttered. "They're testing our ability to work together." She opened a channel to the Zaxxry flagship. "Ambassador, I propose an immediate truce. Whatever our differences, we need to solve this together, or we all die here." There was a long pause before the ambassador responded. Agreed, he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. But how can we trust each other after what has happened? The answer came in the form of a sudden energy surge that rocked both fleets. Warning alarms blared as readings showed a massive buildup of radiation heading our way, enough to fry every living thing in both fleets within minutes. Multiple asteroid-sized objects detected, our sensor operator shouted. They're being accelerated towards us from all directions. Through the maze-like structure, we could see massive chunks of space rock hurtling toward our position, their surfaces glowing from the heat of acceleration. Commander Chen's response was immediate. All ships, form a defensive circle, Zaxri vessels on the outside. Your biohulls are more resistant to radiation. Human ships inside. We'll use our remaining power to generate a magnetic field to deflect the smaller debris. For a moment, no one moved. Years of distrust and prejudice hung between our species like a physical barrier. Then slowly, the first Zaxri ship moved into position, followed by another and another. Our own fleet responded, creating a formation that neither of us would have considered possible just hours ago. As the asteroids approached, we discovered why the Watchers had left us with minimal power. Every joule of energy had to be used perfectly, every decision had to be unanimous, and every action had to be coordinated between both species. One mistake, one moment of distrust, and we'd all be space dust. Through the maze structure, we could see more challenges approaching: spatial anomalies, gravitational distortions, and what appeared to be tears in spacetime itself. But something else was happening too, something unexpected. As human and Zaxri crews worked together, sharing resources and solving problems, we began to notice patterns in the Watcher's maze, patterns that seemed oddly familiar to both our species. Commander Chen was the first to recognize it. These patterns, she gasped, studying the formation. They're not random. They're telling us something. Something both our species should understand. Her eyes widened as the realization hit her. But if we're reading this correctly, oh God. The Zaxri ambassador's voice crackled over the comm. We see it too, Commander. If we're right about what these patterns mean, we have less than 10 minutes to prevent a disaster that will affect not just our fleets, but the entire sector, and we'll need to do something that neither of our species has ever attempted before. The patterns scattered throughout the Watcher's maze weren't just a test. They were a warning. Written in the ancient mathematical language shared by both our species, they reveal a terrifying truth. The Watchers weren't testing us for their amusement. They were desperately searching for species capable of working together to prevent an imminent catastrophe. The gravitational readings are off the charts, Walsh reported, his voice shaking. Those aren't just random spatial anomalies out there. They're micro-tears in the fabric of spacetime, and they're growing. The Zaxri ambassador's next words confirmed our worst fears. Our ancient texts speak of this, the cascade effect. When too many advanced civilizations develop quantum drives without coordination, they create weaknesses in spacetime. We're sitting at the epicenter of what could become a sector-wide collapse. Commander Chen's face hardened as she processed this information. So that's why they brought us here, not to fight each other, but to prove we can work together to solve this. She opened a channel to all ships, both human and Zaxri. Listen up. Every quantum drive activation in this sector's history has left a scar in spacetime. Those scars are starting to connect, and when they do, the entire sector will collapse into a void, the Zaxri ambassador finished, taking countless civilizations with it. But as we watched the tears growing larger, we noticed something else, something that made even the Watcher's massive ship shift position. Behind the quantum tears, barely visible through our failing sensors, loomed a darkness deeper than the space around it. A massive object was approaching, something that shouldn't exist in our reality. Gravimetric sensors are going crazy, Walsh announced. Whatever that thing is, it's bending light around it. It's like reality itself is being pulled apart at the seams. The Watcher's next message was more urgent. The void breach approaches. Your species have contributed to its creation. Together, you must seal it, or all will be lost. Commander Chen exchanged looks with the Zaxri ambassador through the video feed. Both understood the gravity of the situation. Our 37 human ships and their 300 Zaxri vessels now seemed insignificant against the cosmic horror approaching us. "We need to combine our technologies," Chen said, her mind racing. "Your bioships can regenerate, adapt. Our quantum disruptors can stabilize spatial anomalies. If we could somehow—" "Yes," the ambassador interrupted, excitement creeping into his voice. "Yes, your quantum disruptors. They weren't designed as weapons at all, were they? They were created to help stabilize your early quantum drive experiments." A plan began to form, but it was incredibly risky. We'd need to modify both fleets' systems in ways never attempted before, creating a massive quantum stability field. But there was a catch, a terrible one that made my blood run cold when I realized what it would mean. "The calculations are clear," Walsh said quietly. "To generate a field strong enough to seal the breach, we'd need every ship linked together. But the power requirement—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Commander Chen finished it for him. "The power requirement would burn out every ship's systems, including life support." She let that sink in before continuing. "We can save the sector, save countless lives, but—" The Zaxri ambassador straightened in his chair, mandibles clicking with determination. "But none of us will survive to see it." As both fleets absorbed this revelation, the void breach grew larger, its edges now visible to the naked eye. A window into absolute nothingness that threatened to devour everything in its path. We had minutes at most to make our decision. That's when we received one final message from the Watchers. But this one was different. It wasn't a test or a warning. It was something that would change everything we thought we knew about them, about ourselves, and about the true nature of their test. The Watchers' final message wasn't just text this time. It was a stream of technical data, schematics, and calculations. Their massive ship began to move, positioning itself between our combined fleet and the approaching void breach. "These readings," Walsh gasped, studying the data. "They're showing us something about their ship's structure. It's not a single ship at all. It's thousands of smaller vessels, all linked together." Commander Chen's eyes widened with realization. "They're not just testing us, they're showing us the solution. Look at their ship's configuration." On the tactical display, the Watcher's vessel began to separate, revealing the intricate way its components worked together. The Zaxri ambassador's voice crackled with excitement. "Of course, we don't need to sacrifice our entire fleets. If we arrange our ships in the same pattern—" He paused, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Commander Chen, if we interlock our vessels in this formation, using your quantum disruptors as focal points and our bioships' regenerative fields as stabilizers, we could create a synchronized quantum mesh," Chen finished. "Strong enough to seal the breach, but distributed enough that no single ship bears the full power load." She immediately opened channels to all vessels. "All ships, begin formation Alpha 7. Human vessels at these coordinates. Zaxri ships interlocking here and here. Move." Time was running out. The void breach had grown to terrifying proportions, its edges crackling with impossible energies. As our ships moved into position, the Watcher's vessel split completely, its smaller components forming a protective ring around our combined fleet. "Power systems linked," Walsh announced. "Quantum mesh is forming. It's working. The breach is beginning to shrink." But victory wasn't going to come easily. As the quantum mesh began to close the breach, something reached out from within the void, tendrils of pure darkness that sought to pull our ships apart. "Hold formation," Chen commanded as vessels on both sides began to strain against the pull. "If we break apart now, the backlash will tear this entire sector apart." The Zaxri ambassador's ship, positioned directly opposite the Hyperion, was taking the brunt of the void's pull. "Commander," he called out, his voice steady despite the situation, "my ship's biohull is failing. We need more power to complete the closure." That's when we received one final gift from the Watchers. Their smaller vessels began to pulse with energy, adding their power to our quantum mesh. The combined energy output was beyond anything our sensors could measure. "The breach is collapsing," Walsh shouted over the groaning of our straining hull. "Just a few more seconds." In those final moments, as human and Zaxri ships worked in perfect harmony, supported by the ancient Watchers themselves, I understood why they had chosen this test. It was never about proving our worth through combat or technology. It was about proving we could overcome our prejudices and work together to face a threat greater than ourselves. The void breach collapsed with a silent flash that temporarily blinded our sensors. When our systems recovered, the breach was gone, and so were the Watchers. But they had left us one final message, displayed simultaneously on every ship in both fleets. You have passed the first test. You are now ready for the truth about your origins, and the real reason both your species share so many common patterns. The next phase begins when you are ready to learn why humans and Zaxri were never truly strangers to each other. Commander Chen and the Zaxri ambassador exchanged knowing looks through their video link. Both understood that what had started as a simple territorial dispute had just become the beginning of something much bigger, a mystery that would reshape our understanding of not just our place in the galaxy, but of our own origins. As our fleets began the long process of disengaging from the quantum mesh formation, one thing was clear: the tiny fleet that had been mocked just hours ago had helped save not just humanity, not just the Zaxri, but perhaps the entire sector. And in doing so, we had unlocked a mystery that would change everything we thought we knew about our existence among the stars. In the days that followed, both fleets underwent repairs in high orbit around Mars. Our ships docked side by side like old allies, rather than former enemies. The sight of human engineers working alongside Zaxri biotechnicians had become surprisingly normal. They taught us about their organic technology while we shared our insights into quantum mechanics. Together, we began to unravel the patterns the Watchers had shown us. Commander Chen spent countless hours with the Zaxri ambassador in what had once been our war room, now converted into a joint research center. Scattered across the holographic displays were ancient symbols from both our cultures, symbols that should have been completely different but showed stunning similarities. Look at this. Chen pointed to a series of mathematical equations from Earth's earliest civilizations. Beside them, the ambassador had placed nearly identical formulas from Zaxri archaeological sites. These aren't just similar. They're exactly the same, written thousands of years ago on planets light years apart. The ambassador's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. And these are not just mathematical formulas, Commander. They're coordinates. Star charts pointing to specific locations in space. We've already identified 3 systems that both our ancient cultures marked as significant. Walsh, who had been analyzing the Watcher's final data burst, looked up from his console. The quantum signatures from those systems matched the energy pattern of the Watcher's ship perfectly. They've been guiding both our species all along, waiting for us to be ready. I remember standing at the viewport, watching Earth rise over the Martian horizon, thinking about how our perspective had shifted so dramatically. Just weeks ago, we had been preparing for what we thought would be humanity's greatest war. Now, we were planning our first joint expedition with the Zaxri, ready to unlock the secrets of our shared heritage. The void breach had left its mark on space, a permanent reminder of how close we come to destruction. But it had also left its mark on us. Human and Zaxri ships now carried modified versions of each other's technology, making them stronger together than they ever were apart. You know what's funny? Chen said during our final briefing before the expedition launch. They called us the tiny fleet because they thought size was what mattered. But the Watchers knew better. They knew that true strength isn't about numbers or technology. It's about the ability to grow, to change, to work together. The Zaxri ambassador, now a permanent liaison to Earth's fleet, added, and perhaps that was the real test all along. Not whether we could fight together, but whether we could learn to trust each other enough to build something new. As I record this log, our joint expedition is preparing to depart. 37 human ships and 300 Zaxri vessels, once poised to destroy each other, now form a single fleet. We're heading toward the coordinates hidden in our ancient texts, ready to uncover the truth about our mysterious connection. The Watchers are still out there, watching and waiting. We don't know what other tests lie ahead, or what greater challenges we'll face. But we do know this: whatever we find among the stars, we'll face it together, Because sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from conquering our enemies, but from realizing they were never really our enemies at all. Commander Chen's final words before we jumped to quantum space seem fitting. They mocked our tiny fleet, but they forgot one crucial thing. It's not the size of the fleet that matters, it's the size of its courage, its wisdom, and its heart. And as we accelerate toward our destiny, I can't help but wonder, perhaps that was the greatest lesson the Watchers wanted us to learn all along. After all, in the vast expanse of space, no fleet is truly tiny when it carries the hopes, dreams, and combined strength of two civilizations united as one. This is First Officer Michael Chen, signing off. The next chapter of our story awaits among the stars.